Reed case.
Correct.
Joseph Paul, the trooper who does accident reconstruction. He's a crash expert. That testimony, very important for this jury, so let's go back in as he gets to the crux of this.
Yes, I have been certified to use the Leica, and I've also have a Part 107 license for the drone.
Now, as far as starting with the Leica or the GPS, if you could explain to the jury sort of what that is and how you use that device in order to, as you termed it, map.
Yes, it's essentially what surveyors would use to make roadways. It uses satellites and GPS data plus cell phone data to make marks on the roadway, or actually not marks, but just mark points in the roadway that are within millimeters of the device.
And with regard to the drone device, sir, how does that, can you explain to the jury sort of how that works and how that's used?
Yeah, so the drone, and we fly the drone around the area. We set it to set up a grid pattern to fly around the scene. And while it's flying this grid pattern, it takes a series of photographs. And these photographs are also GPS marked. So once we get all the photographs in, we throw into a program, and the program will essentially stitch us all together. And then once we get that picture, we throw it into a diagramming system.
And that diagramming system, have you also received training in regard to utilization of that diagramming system?
Yes, I have.
And the one that you're currently using within the CARS unit, what is that diagramming system or software called?
It's IMS 360.
And Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you 4 documents, asking you to just review those.
Okay.
Finish. And do you recognize those, sir?
I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
These are the diagrams that we print out through the program.
And the last one is the drone image, is that correct?
Yes, they're all drone images. The last one is just one that was put into my diagram, and I labeled it as a drone image.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm also seek to introduce the witness to the next 4 exhibits.
No objection.
Now, Trooper Paul, are you familiar with the term, well, let me ask you this, in regard to the roadway itself, what, if anything else, beyond sort of lane width and overall width, what, if any, other measurements did you take there?
So we took measurements for the evidence.
Let me ask it this way, as far as with elevation and incline of the roadway, what, if any, measurements did you take in regard to that?
Yeah, so we took the elevation and roadway measurements, or the elevation for the roadway.
And where in relation to the residents at 34 Fairview did you take that? Sort of the entire street or just in the general area of that specific address?
In the general area of that specific address.
And from your measurements as far as, well, let me ask you this, how is measurement regarded to elevation or incline? What kind of tool do you use for that?
We have a level, the digital level that we'll place on the roadway, and we'll get a measurement from that.
Now, with regard to the measurements that you took of the elevation or the incline in the roadway, anything, or what, if anything, of significance did you find from that?
So this roadway had approximately plus or minus 1 to 2 degrees.
So nothing significant, is that fair to say?
Nothing significant, yes.
Now, sir, through your training and experience as a crash reconstructionist, are you familiar with the term related to crash reconstruction called roadway evidence?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what your understanding of that term is and what types of things could be termed as roadway evidence?
Roadway evidence is anything that's related to the collision you're investigating at the time. It could be anything from vehicle debris, gouge marks, tire marks, anything that's related to a vehicle or whatever type of crash you are investigating. It could be vehicle or pedestrians.
So any sort of anything from either the vehicle or pedestrian as well, is that correct?
Correct.
So pieces from a vehicle, holding items from a pedestrian, correct?
Yes.
Now, with respect to both your review of the CERT team diagrams as well as speaking with members of the Canton Police Department, were you able to then plot certain pieces of roadway evidence onto those diagrams that you that I just showed you a few moments ago?
Yes, I was.
Now, with reference to you're familiar also through your training and experience when it comes to pedestrian crashes, as far as sort of the physics or kinematics of how pedestrians interact with vehicles in the course of a collision?
Yes, I am.
Now, I'm going to ask you just a couple of terminology questions when it comes to items that are involved in a collision, sort of simple Newtonian physics, Newton's first law. Can you explain what that is to the jury and sort of how that pertains to any collision between two objects?
The first law?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the when an object stays in motion or stays at rest, will stay at motion or rest until acted upon by an outside force.
Now, with respect to, are you familiar also with a crash reconstruction term called final rest?
Yes, I am.
And are there different derivations of final rest as far as controlled final rest versus uncontrolled final rest?
Correct.
And can you explain just first to the jury what final rest means in relation to crash reconstruction, and then what, if any, differences there are between a controlled final rest and an uncontrolled final rest?
Yes, the final rest is what we use for describe the area where a pedestrian came to stop after the collision. It's immediately after the collision. This is where they first stopped, or a vehicle. Usually at the collision, it's where this vehicle first stopped. And a controlled final rest is when an operator actually controls the vehicle to the stop, and as opposed to the uncontrolled final rest is when there is no control. It's usually acted upon by outside forces that will control the vehicle or pedestrian to its final rest.
And, Your Honor, with court's permission, if I could publish what's now been marked as Exhibits 584 through 587 for the jury.
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could first have a diagram. And Your Honor, may I approach this to return the exhibits to the witness? Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to zoom in just a little bit on that. And now, Trooper, what you have up on the screen, is that what you have before you as the first in that exhibits?
Yes, it is.
Now, using the laser before you, if you could, I would ask you to draw the jury's attention or direction to what, if anything, of significance you have noted within this diagram.
Okay. Let me use the pointer. Okay. So in this time, I labeled each part of evidence. So right here would be the pedestrian's final rest, and they're all, since there's so many put together, everything was labeled with a red arrow that would be pointing to where the final rest is. And this is where a glass cup was found, and these are the red and clear plastic pieces. That's where they were found, and the pedestrian's shoe was found here. The smaller versions here in the light blue is one's the fire hydrants, the flagpole. This is a label for the street 34, and obviously the street name Fairview Road here.
Now, as far as measurements were concerned, what, if anything, were you able to do to measure sort of between different points of roadway evidence, or specifically from the pedestrian or Mr. O'Keefe's final rest in reference to other items that you have depicted on the diagram?
So we're talking about on these diagrams.
Okay, so I'm looking at this diagram, this picture, this beautiful exhibit here, Dave Ehrenberg, Katherine Lizardo here as well. Dave, it looks to me like when that car, if you believe this photo and the location of the evidence, when the car, the SUV, hit Mr. O'Keefe, assuming it did, that taillight shattered. I mean, there's pieces of it on the other side of the road compared to where he came to his final rest. What's your take on that?
Well, not a physicist. I don't know how it works when you hit someone at a decent speed and the thing can shatter all over the place, and that's why perhaps it took multiple days to find more pieces. Or I know we're talking off air that perhaps there was a little help with perhaps some corruption in trying to seal the deal against the defendant. Doesn't mean she didn't hit him, but you want to find more of that broken taillight, because the alternative theory is that she backed into a car outside of her driveway ever slightly, and that's where the crack came.
I think that's where they should have stopped, right there, because then you've got contact with something. You could then pair that with the hair and the DNA found of Mr. O'Keefe's on the car. But now you got these pieces of taillight all over the place. It makes no sense that that would have happened running into a person. But we're going to find out, because this witness is going to enlighten us. We're going to take a break.